first episode of Podcast Prime, and I'm your host, Josh Schmidt. Now, why Podcast Prime, you might ask? Well, I'm kind of a big nerd, and I'm currently holding a Optimus Prime action figure, so a huge Transformers fan, so, let me know in any of the comments, wherever you're watching or listening to this, if you are a Transformers fan as well. In fact, tell me which Transformers are your favorite. Mine, of course, Optimus Prime. So, what is this show all about? Well, this is a podcaster's podcast, right? Maybe you're a business looking to use podcasting as a marketing tool. Maybe you want to get into the content creation game and use a podcast as a business. Both of those are completely possible, right? And now is the best time to start a podcast. You may or may not have heard an ad at the beginning of this saying to go check out anchor.fm. After you get for 50 listeners, just 50 listeners, you can monetize your show and start making money with your podcast. So it's fantastic. And the more you grow, the more opportunities are going to come your way. So one more thing that I'm super excited about that I really want to tell you guys about is I just launched an ebook today called Master the Art of Podcasting. The ultimate guide to getting your podcast heard or creating a podcast and getting it heard. There's plenty of people who have started podcasts and then they fall off. The whole point of this book is to keep you going from start to never finish, right? To basically get consistent with your show, put out regular content, and have a great time doing it. Because if you're like me, you will find that podcasts can change your life. So there is a link to the book in the description. It's also a link in my bio on Instagram. You're going to see it's called The Stand Store. We're going to be talking about that kind of stuff, different ways for you guys to monetize your podcast and your content. We'll be getting into all of it. And that book covers a lot of it as well. So again, go check out my latest ebook, Master the Art of Podcasting. Now, this first episode is going to be all about me talking about how podcasts have changed my life, because they really have. There have been so many cool opportunities that have come my way because I started podcasting. And had I known like 13 years ago when I hooked up the microphone for the first time that I would have been doing shows live from the show floor of E3, which is a massive gaming convention, probably one of the biggest, right? For every year in June in LA, all of the major players are there, Nintendo, Sony, Xbox, everybody, most of the time. And I got to do my podcast right from the show floor. Okay. Some other opportunities that came my way, Bungie, who's the creator of Halo and a game called Destiny, invited me to the reveal of Destiny 2, and I got to fly out to Anaheim, hang out with what was one of my co-hosts at that time, and we got to go in and check out the reveal live of Destiny 2. And this was with some major content creators. I'm talking people with millions of subs. And here I was, because of my podcast, sitting in the audience with all these other creators hearing about Destiny for the first time. And that kind of stuff wouldn't happen had it not been for me putting out a lot of episodes. I could say I've literally recorded thousands of episodes of podcasts. There's been numerous podcasts. I did a photography podcast. I did a retro gaming / indie gaming podcast. I did a Destiny podcast. I did an Animal Crossing and a Smash Bros podcast. And I've been doing the Nintendo Powercast for it'll be 6 years this February. And I've done a Halo podcast, been on Star Wars podcasts, been on other Destiny podcasts. I've guested on numerous podcasts because of podcasts. Like, for instance, I've been to E3 twice because of my podcast. And the first time, the group I was with, we were doing a show called Aim Assist, and we had started a show called Siege the Show, and it was about a game called Rainbow Six Siege. Well, Ubisoft, the creators of that game, wined us and dined us, and it was crazy because I had somebody come up to me and start asking me questions about their game. And then they got me a beer, and I didn't think anything of it. I didn't know who it was, right? And I gave honest feedback on some of the games, what I thought of this and how this was, and no big deal, right? And I turn around to go back to my crew, go back to the guys, and they were like, "Yo, that was like the president of one of the divisions of Ubisoft that I was just chatting with, that went and got me a beer," right? It was kind of mind-blowing. Like I didn't expect something like that at all. But to be rubbing shoulders with game devs, and in some cases it's like these guys are relatively famous, right? And so just really, really cool opportunities have come my way because of putting out regular episodes, speaking into a microphone, speaking my opinion, essentially doing talk radio, right? And anybody can do it. You can do it. And so other ways that podcasting has changed my life. I got to go do my show live from Guardian Con. That's what it was called at the time, in Tampa, Florida. And doing a podcast for the first time in front of a live audience, that was pretty surreal and pretty amazing. And I had somebody from IGN helping me get the setup and get set up and get it all taken care of. That was super cool. And having a community member pay for some of a trip to go play Super Smash Brothers at the first Super Major for Smash Bros. Ultimate, never would have guessed something like that would have happened, but it did. Got to fly to Oakland, got to compete in a Super Major for Smash Bros. And I went 1 and 2. And the podcast consisted of me and my co-host, Crawler, basically documenting our journey, learning to play Smash competitively. And so there's so many opportunities that have come my way because of podcasting. And so whether you're into games, or maybe you're looking to start a podcast for your business, there's opportunity everywhere for this, to find people that are interested in what it is you're talking about. Now, the tricky part, the hardest part about all this is getting in front of people. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to put me to the test, okay? So I want you to look up Smash Brothers or Smash Bros podcast. See if you find the Smash Bros cast. I want you to look up Animal Crossing podcast, and I want you to see if you can find. And these are you'll see N64 Josh. That's me. That's what I go by online in the gaming communities, the gaming space. And so look for N64 Josh. Type in Nintendo podcast, whether it be on Apple or Google or anywhere. There's a lot of times that we're as high as number 2, and most of the time sit about at the number 4 spot. Depends on the day, right? It's always changing. Here's what's super cool. All right. I started the Nintendo Powercast when the Switch was announced. And I called it Nintendo Powercast, right? Because Nintendo Power was a magazine I used to read when I was a kid. I thought that was kind of a cool name. Well, fast forward. I started February 23rd, 2017. Okay, fast forward to December 2017. Nintendo starts a show, Nintendo Power Podcast. Now, I got a little nervous because I was afraid that they might come after me because of the name, but they didn't. What they did do is, before they ranked in Google, the Nintendo Powercast, my show, found so many more listeners, right? So many more listeners. I cannot tell you how many, like, the numbers jumped significantly, and it's never really come down. It's pretty much stayed. It jumped so significantly that we hit number 2 on Games and Hobbies on Apple Podcasts. I will never forget that day that I opened up the leaderboard, if you will, and the charts, and saw Nintendo Powercast as number 2. Right? Was there a little bit of luck there? Sure. No question about it. Can I guarantee that will happen to everybody every time they start a show? No. But I can tell you what you're going to need to do to make sure that your show is found organically, that you label you title each episode and even your show accordingly so that I can get put in the right category and show up for the right search results. And I'll give you a quick example of that, right? I talk about it in my book. There's a lot of people that they'll do a podcast, they'll do an episode, and they'll title it episode 1. Nobody has ever been found for titling their episode 1. Unless maybe it had to do with Star Wars. Maybe it would show up then. But other than that, no one's finding that show. It's not going to be found. You want to include keywords, right? Some of you are probably listening to this. You're very familiar with keywords. Some of you may not be familiar with it at all. Keywords are the words that people are using when they're searching for the content they're interested in, right? So in my case, I've done a lot of gaming stuff. I've done a lot of Nintendo stuff, a lot of Destiny stuff, and I had to make some adjustments. For instance, when I did the Lootcast, that was a Destiny podcast, but guess what? All it said was the Lootcast. Well, how is that going to appear in any search results? Making sure that each title of every podcast episode helps for sure, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's going to make that show rank as a Destiny podcast. So what did I do? Well, I went in and I changed the name of the Lootcast. I left it the Lootcast because you're always getting loot in Destiny. It made sense, but it just wasn't necessarily searched, right? And my website was the Loot Cave, which is something that you went to when you were playing the game. But again, not that many people searching for it. So I changed the name to the Lootcast, a Destiny podcast. And that's what people are going to typically be searching for. They're going to search for the name and then they might throw the word podcast after it. More than likely not. But I wanted to make sure that if anybody was typing Destiny, looking for Destiny content, just like I did, this is exactly what I did. I wanted to learn more about this game. I worked 10 hours a day and I wanted to hear people discussing this game I was interested in. So I went on to Apple, or it was iTunes at the time, typed in Destiny podcast, and besides getting a ton of churches talking about Destiny, whatever, there were a handful of gaming shows, and I was able to connect with some of them, actually build relationships with them, and then ended up becoming joining the team of one of those shows that was getting somewhere along the lines of like 10,000 downloads an episode. So a lot of people were hearing their voice. And I was listening to that show week after week. And we had a lot of fun. It was the kind of thing where we would get together every week. We would talk about Destiny. We would crack a beer and give our little drink review and then talk about games. And that's one of the things that is the most fun about podcasting, is it gives you the opportunity to get creative. You don't have to just be talk radio. You can do things that are completely different from anything you've ever seen before. Now, you take some of those risks, it may reward you, it may not, but that's part of being creative and trying to see what works, what fits. And I mean, I've had times where doing the Nintendo show and the Nintendo stuff was kind of lacking a little bit as far as like the hype levels for the community, including our own. So we started just literally playing Mario Golf while we were recording, and we got some bad reviews for it. Some people didn't like that, but it was what we needed to do to keep going, to be able to have fun with the content we were creating. Because it's either you have fun with the content you're creating or you end up walking away from it. And I did not want to walk away from something that I had put so much time and invested so much effort in. So I had to modify a little bit. And now we're back on track, and something super, super cool is going to be happening this weekend, actually. The Nintendo Powercast is recording episode 400, and we are all meeting in Denver. We're doing a meetup with the community. We're recording the show live from our Airbnb, and we're going to be making a ton of content together. And these are people that I've just met from podcasting. One of the co-hosts, Nightcrawler, he used to just be a listener. He was somebody that was in the live streams. And we talked a lot. He'd hit me up on Discord. We started playing some games. And then eventually I was like, yo, you should just jump on and be part of the show. And so he did. Johnny, who's on the Nintendo Powercast, he made a TikTok saying he wanted Nintendo friends. So I hit him up. Then he jumped on the show. And then Cheesy, the last member that we recently added about a year ago, same kind of thing. Just see him on TikTok, see him making his content. And I was like, yo, you should come on, be a guest. Right. And then he did so well. We ended up having him join us and be a permanent host on the show. And so now the four of us get to hang out this weekend in Colorado. And what's cool is that the podcast is going to be helping fund this trip. And that's what I'm going to wrap this show up on, is talking about how to monetize your podcast and why I recommend Anchor.fm. Now, I'm not getting anything for recommending Anchor.fm. There's no affiliate link. There's no nothing. But it's free, which that right there removes the barrier of entry for people to start creating, which is huge for me because I want to see people creating. I know that creating podcasts has helped me to stay creative as a creative person week after week, to give me an outlet, to give me something to look forward to and to create and to grow like a business. And Anchor makes it easier for everybody. If you're not watching the video, I'm holding up my phone right now. You can download the Anchor app even. You can record your show like I'm doing right now right into your phone and start getting your podcast out there to the masses right now. And so I want to encourage you to do that very thing. Head on over to Anchor.fm, download the app on your phone. Even if you don't have the best gear, it's okay. If you don't have the nicest microphone, you don't have the nicest cameras, don't worry about that. Don't let that be a hindrance to you whatsoever, because you got to start somewhere. There's always excuses for starting. I don't have the right mic. I don't have a good enough camera. I will say this. First and foremost, get a good mic when you can, but don't wait for that. Don't wait. Start creating right now. Okay? Start creating right now. Think about the things I talked about on this episode. Podcasting can change your life. It's a ton of fun. It introduces you to a ton of people. Okay. Make sure you take advantage of SEO, search engine optimization, a quick and easy way to test the title that you're going to use. It's before you publish everything. Take the title that's in your head, go to YouTube and start typing those words in. The first results that show up for those words are the words that you want to use for your podcast when you're uploading your video to YouTube as well as the audio, right? Because every podcast player is also a search engine. iTunes or Apple Podcasts, search engine. Google Podcasts, search engine. Spotify, search engine. So take the step. Don't worry about gear. Get out there. Start creating a show right now. Get on Anchor.fm. After 50 listeners is all it takes. So you literally share the show with your family, okay? You will be able to monetize and start making money for your podcast. Remember, if you want to take a deeper dive into all this stuff, I just launched Master the Art of Podcasting. It's available in the description here. You can also find it in the link in all of my bios, whether you're on IG or TikTok or Twitter. And you can follow the show, and all of our socials are at Podcast Prime Now. The website, which is not up yet, is going to be podcastprimenow.com. And I'm taking imperfect action with this show. I don't have all my ducks in a row, but I don't care because I want to document this journey. I'm going to show exactly how many downloads we get each week. And I need your questions. So whether you leave me a question directly in the app on like Anchor, and I think you can do it from the description, whatever podcast player you're using, I believe there's a spot there for that. Maybe you found this on YouTube, leave a comment there and let me know, what are your questions when it comes to podcasting? What are your hurdles? I love to go through this stuff. I'm going to be doing a webinar very soon where I'm going to take live questions. I'm going to go through the process of setting up a show. And I want to see as many people as possible getting their show off the ground. The last thing I'm going to say is this. I've started working with people, helping them get their show off the ground. So if you're a business that's like, yo, we want to do a podcast, we have a marketing budget for this, but we don't really have the time. Well, I also offer a service where you can jump into my virtual studio and I will hit the record button. I will play the producer so you can see the cameras change just like they're doing here. And maybe it's if you have a guest, we can switch between you and the guest, whatever the case is. And I'll produce it. I'll do some light editing for you. And I'll also get it uploaded for you. So all you got to do is show up and record. And I take care of the rest. So you can email me, josh@podcastprimenow.com, or within that link in all my bios, there's a spot to set up a discovery call with me. It links right to my Google Calendar. You can pick a spot that works for you, and we can discuss all of your podcast needs. And it's not just podcast needs. I'm also consulting people that want to figure out how to crack the code when it comes to TikToks, YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels. And I can come up with a strategy for you there as well. So thank you guys so much for being a part of episode 1, the pilot episode of Podcast Prime. And I cannot wait to see where this takes us. And I just want to say I appreciate you for listening, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye now.